There is a problem with real-life dating events. Men are not showing up. Dating apps are on the decline, but a growing number of Gen Z and millennial singles are turning to and creating in real-life dating events.
They literally just don't want to put in the effort, and they're that scared of rejection. And of course, the other reason they keep giving is like, well, I don't want to seem creepy or weird, and I want to talk about both of these points. Because if you're a normal person and you approach women in a normal way and hold a normal conversation, that's literally all it takes to not be seen as creepy and weird.
There is a problem with real-life dating events. Men are not showing up. Dating apps are on the decline, but a growing number of Gen Z and millennial singles are turning to and creating in real-life dating events. Tickets almost always sell, but there's one key problem. Men are too scared to turn up.
Apparently now when it comes to dating, men are doing literally the least in every sense of the term. What a shocker. Brought to you by the gender who convinced you that they were world leaders for forever. They're now too scared to even show up to in-person dating events. Now we're expecting women to carry the bulk of the work in that department as well. Lock in here today, Women's Sphere. I want to talk about this article that was released so bad because we're seeing this echoed across the country, honestly, everywhere. But yes, we all know the dating apps are terrible. They're not working well. So in New York, they decided to make these in-person dating events, but apparently men are so shy and scared of rejection at literal dating apps for dating and conversation that they're not showing up to the point where women are expected to bring a male friend to get entry. Which is interesting because on dating apps, men still outweigh women 68%, so that doesn't mean that men don't want to date.
That's such an important fact that she just brought up. I know she's gonna gloss over that. And let's break that down and what that really is trying to tell us. She's saying that men are too scared to approach women. That's not factually true. What's happening is, and this is something that I just don't understand why women, especially women like her, because I already know, I can already tell her type just hearing her talk and the way she speaks, is that majority of the men, the top 10, top 15, top 20% or whatever, that top tier man, he's not having these problems. Those guys are approaching if they want to, or women are approaching us. So at the end of the day, that doesn't really bother them. The 68%, think about that. That's in line with the same theory that men have been screaming, and the studies have been showing you that 68% of men, a high percentage, more than the majority, way more, 2x, 3, almost, that's like 3x, the majority, still are on dating apps, and majority of those guys are not getting any play. Out of all that 68%, I would say probably ballpark, if we say 10% of is about 6.8%, maybe closer to 8 to 10% at the most, right? If we're going to 15% total are the guys getting all the action. The rest of those guys aren't getting no play. Those are the guys that are scared to show up to the dating events and things like that. Not the guys who get all the play on the dating apps, are approached by women. So the numbers aren't technically skewed. They just are showing you things if you dive into them. I think that's what a lot of problem that especially women like her are going to face, is that they don't really want to dive in and understand the role that they play in this whole thing. The easiest way for this to get fixed is this. Yes, some people might say, oh, those guys can get better. But guess what? If every guy became better, the bar would just raise. That's how that works, right? If everyone became a millionaire today, billionaire would be the next thing that we looked at. That would be considered average. Unfortunately, most women don't want average men. I'm not someone who's gonna preach to a guy. I would never preach to anyone that I'm mentoring to be average. My whole goal in starting this channel and having this whole thing is to help push men forward, help them become better versions of themselves, physically, mentally, financially. But that doesn't negate the fact that things like dating is still difficult for most people, and not everybody is going to be able to fit the umbrella and become their best version of themselves. Unfortunately, human beings aren't a monolith in that regard that we can just get better. I think it's very interesting and telling that she doesn't want to see that very fact. Let's continue.
They literally just don't want to put in the effort, and they're that scared of rejection. And of course, the other reason they keep giving is like, well, I don't want to seem creepy or weird, and I want to talk about both of these points. Because if you're a normal person and you approach women in a normal way and hold a normal conversation, that's literally all it takes to not be seen as creepy and weird. Me and all my girlfriends love having conversations with literally anyone when we go out. Just be respectful. But it is getting ridiculous to me that men are literally so anxious and afraid of their own emotions and rejection that they can't even show up to a dating event made for that. And honestly, we're all seeing this right now. It's getting out of hand. I have had men schedule dates with me and then freak out beforehand and cancel, and then later come back and apologize and try to reschedule. To which, like, no, you had a chance. Their brains are almost like so rotted they forget that women are indeed real people as well.
One more thing that's so important to understand is she's actually reinforcing a negative in those men's head. The men that are already going to be struggling with finding a date or aren't in that top 10% 1%. Let's just be honest. She's not describing a guy who's an elite guy who other women want. You can just tell by the way she set it up, right? That she's probably describing an average, maybe above average, maybe a guy who's even a decent earner. Has probably not always does it always have to do with money. That's why it's so important that, you know, men understand this. You can't just be wealthy, or maybe not wealthy, because most, if you're wealthy, then you definitely have a different game, because there is a difference between rich and wealthy. You can't just be rich or upper middle class, or, you know, depending on what state you're in, earning $250,000. That's not gonna cut it. You actually have to build a personality. If not, you're not gonna be able to compete with some of these other guys. Men, especially in certain groups and circles, these dudes are gonna be physically fit, mentally, they're mentally with it, strong enough, and they got the money. We're gonna have the ability to play the game for as long as we want to. As a man, you have to work on that. So let's go back to what she was saying. She's saying that this guy he didn't even want to put in the effort to, you know, whatever she was talking about. The point is, the type of guy that she's talking about is more like the noodle bag type dudes who probably never really had much of a play with her. She is so strong and masculine that she is literally repelling the other guys. Those guys are not going to find this type of girl attractive. They might go on a date with her, maybe even see her at a you know, gas station or whatever, at a restaurant. And once they strike up a conversation, ladies, I promise you, men, we can pick it up instantly just by the certain things you say, certain ways you act. And you're like, oh no, this is a dude. Like, not a physical dude, but the way you think is real masculine. You don't do the soft things well. This girl, unfortunately, I mean, I could be wrong. She doesn't look like someone who does the soft things well. Let's just call it what it is. She's not on the softer side. You can even tell by the cadence and just the way that she talks.
Last man I was dating suppressed his emotions for some reason so hard that it came all out on that 2 a.m. phone call where he demanded right then and there to know if I would marry him and have his kids someday, when we hadn't even had a discussion about what we were and how serious things were. And he literally couldn't even fathom coping with rejection so bad that I asked for more time to just like consider this whole huge thing, and he freaked out and ruined the relationship right then and there. At this point, I feel like it's just 1,000 men versus coping with any amount of anxiety or singular emotion at all. They keep all reportedly complaining that they can't deal with the changing expectations of them in society, and that expectation is literally just like them being normal people and maybe knowing how to communicate.
I always think it's crazy how certain women can do this thing where it's literally the problems that they have, they just flip it and they make it that men are the ones that have it. I forget the word for that, but projecting. They're so good at it. Like what she just described at the very end is kind of what a lot of women end up complaining about, right? Or those that have this issue, I should say, which is that either men aren't capable of or want to fit into this new role. Well, no. We've been the same. Like we've been the same. It's not, I don't understand how she cannot get that. But let's take a recap on it. We are seeing this across state line. No matter online, wherever you go, you are always going to see all these single dating events, a ton of women and a little bit of men. And this is very simple as to the reason why this is. The men who are at the top of the totem pole do not need to show up to dating events. Sure, it would be free smoke, meaning they have the ability to win even more. But for the most part, they got other shit going on. They're taking care of business. They're in the gym. They're learning how to communicate better. They're getting their lives together. They're getting their finances up. So they're not worried about that shit. They're not worried about it. Now, the other guys, on the other hand, who might have parts of their lives together, who are above average, because let's just call it what it is. Even the above average guy, for the most part, a majority of that is still not getting the same amount of play. And that one is where I think it's the disservice that we've done in society to those men. Honestly, it's sad and a little bit heartbreaking, just because that is the average guy. He's above average, and yet he still can't get the play. So those guys aren't gonna go. Why? Because they know I might be a little socially weird, because most of those guys, they kind of know what their issues are. Now you could say, why can't they just go work on it? Well, guess what? It's not as easy as people think to go fix problems that you have. It takes the effort, and yes, a lot of them should be able to do it, but some of those things are like, they can't fix their height. They can't fix that they're 5'6", 5'7". You can't fix that. And when they go to these dating events, they're gonna get crucified by women saying, oh, he's too short, he's too this. So those guys don't end up going. So what you end up finding is a very small percentage of men who are able to say, okay, I have these flaws. I am 5'6", 5'7". I have a really good job. I'm funny, but guess what? I'm going to show up. I'm going to take the courage. I'm going to go there. And when they go there, women give them the side eye. Women, castigate them to the point where they're like, you know what? I'm not going to show. I'm going to show you this next video. It's about another dating event that took place I think it's in Atlanta. And you should just take a look at the picture and look at the ratio.
King of G singles out in Best 2020.
All right, so you can tell that honestly, that's not a bad room to be in. There's a lot of women in that room, a lot of single. I would hope so, because this is a singles lounge, single event. But one thing you can see, even if just this snapshot, I can only see like maybe 9 or 10 men and the rest are women. Now, I think I saw somewhere online that the actual numbers when it came out from this event was like, I think it was like 80% or 90% women and a very small 15 to 20% men. So the numbers were staggering. I think it might have even been worse than that. The numbers were staggering. So long story short, man, we are living in one of the craziest times as far as the dating scene and all of that. For men, it is important. It is imperative that you work on yourself. Unfortunately, we cannot force women. We can try. What's going on right now is forcing women to have to consider other options. But I'll tell you this, the probability tells me that women are more likely to join multiple, meaning multiple women talking to the same guy and just living with it and hoping that they can be number one or they can be number two, or some of them even just flat out making poly relationships out of these things, right? There's a high probability of that happening, unfortunately, than women taking 100% of the U-turn or 100% of a U-turn and actually fixing the problem. As a man, I cannot stress this enough. It is going to be difficult if you don't work on yourself, especially if you aren't able to speak to people. There's so many ways and so many things that you can do to help to work on those things, because unfortunately you are going to lose if you're not interested in dealing with women yet. Well, I always ask men this, okay, so what are you going to do? I get it, you can get your passport, but if you're gonna live in the West and you're going to try to date these women, it is in your best interest. Matter of fact, I'll say this, regardless where you wanna go, it is in your best interest to do it for yourself. Become the best version of yourself. Focus on that. Once you get all of that, you will be able to pick the women. Women will sit and they will cry over problems that just because you don't want them around. They will think, every woman you meet or date will think you're the one. And that feeling, I wish most men would understand that, because it'll force you to continue to work on yourself. Man, if you guys like the content, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.